All right. Well, Alex, welcome to Founders Live Conversations.
Thanks, Nick. Great to be here.
It is so nice to be here. You know, we're sitting here in Codebase here in Edinburgh, in Scotland. It's so great to be here. I've been here a few days, and I am enjoying the blue skies.
You brought the good weather with you, man. It's
It
amazing.
is great. Well, Alex, we're going to get into a great conversation here. First and foremost, though, maybe just a little background on yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Alex. I started off my career in finance. Turned out I was not very good at finance. I was particularly bad at being an employee. And so I had very few options open to me. So entrepreneurship was, I suppose, as much a destiny as anything else. Turned out I was also pretty crap at that. So the first thing I set up, we lasted for about 5 years. I was founder CEO, and in the last year I moved to a consultancy role. And I suppose that was my first big experiment with startup life. So sort of building a business, coming up with ideas, getting venture backing, running a team, and we had to do it remotely over COVID. And then that sort of closed. I went off and did a few other things, and I've done it all over again. I'm a glutton for punishment, but here I am.
We're going to talk about that. First off, you mentioned before, but you're a Brit. But tell us about so we're here in Scotland, but where did you grow up, and what brought you to this great country?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I came here for the weather, but Scotland's been great to us. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful country. So I grew up in Suffolk, which is on the east coast of England, and then moved to London for work. So worked down there for something like 11 years. We spent a bit of time in Cyprus with my partner, and then when we came back, we're like, well, where do we want to live? Like, we don't really want to live in a big city again. And Edinburgh's perfect. You know, this isn't a tourism video for Edinburgh, but it's kind of like a village that thinks it's a town that thinks it's a city. You know, so it's super small. Everything is within strolling distance. The people are lovely. The food is good, and there's a lot of diversity. So it's great as a startup sort of guy, I suppose, because you have all these ideas that are sort of gestating in this environment. So yeah, I can't recommend Edinburgh highly enough. I'm sure there's other great cities out there in Scotland, but Edinburgh's the one we chose.
Well, I'm enjoying it so far, and I've had a good couple days.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's go into. I always like to ask the question, why entrepreneurship? And first, what does entrepreneurship mean to you?
Okay, so other than the fact that no one would employ me, so I've got to start getting good at entrepreneurship. The thing that really excites me is problem solving, and I know it's so cliche, but right from my earliest years, my memories are of building things. So it's like Lego things, or then there's Airfix. I don't know if that's something you guys had in the States, but they're like little plastic models, usually of like World War II planes and stuff like that. And so I got this great interest in building stuff. The problem is, as soon as it's built, I'm not particularly excited by it anymore. So entrepreneurship's fantastic because you have these constant problems that you've got to solve. You've got to keep building. And so I find that aspect of it totally and utterly addictive. So whether that's my startups or the startups that I am an advisor for, that's a bit that gets me really, really excited. So that's primarily why I've chosen entrepreneurship as a way to deal with my otherwise, unemployment.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot too. I identify with that in some ways. I had a career outside of the tech and entrepreneurial industry before, as I got out of university, but I don't. It's not like I was unemployable. I thought maybe the right way to say it is the job never fit me. Like, it was like every single time I was like running up against the ceiling or the barriers of that position, or like what was required to do. And it was like, you know what? And other conversations I have, people use the word freedom. And I think that there's an aspect of this is like, when you say like, it's hard to employ you, maybe it's more like because I put you in that category, we just desire more of an open field to work in and build in, versus a lot of times jobs are constrained. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that love and appreciate those constraints. Entrepreneurship is more of an open field.
Yeah, I think you're right. And actually, like, funny enough, that's been my biggest challenge with employing people, because you have to write like a job description and you have to
Right.
tell people like what to do. And the first time I built a startup, and we hired like I think over the course of time like a dozen people, um, it was super difficult because you kind of think like, right, like this is a problem. Surely you get that you've just got to try and like solve the
Just
problems,
do
right?
it.
Like just do it. And I suppose, as you say, it's a different way of thinking. And I, as I've sort of matured and become more aware, I've recognized that not everyone functions, luckily for them, in the way that my brain functions. So yeah, I think it's totally right. I would dispute the freedom side. I mean, I think it's a lovely sort of selling point of entrepreneurship, but it's kind of more like being a drug addict. Like you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with the shakes because
Yeah.
you've got to find a solution, or you're worrying about this, or you're thinking about that. So yeah, freedom in some ways, but also
We're painting such great pictures here.
don't do it, guys.
Don't do it. It's not worth. No, it is. Look, entrepreneurship is it's the most challenging, if well, one of the most challenging things you
Mm,
can do with your life. It can also be the most rewarding. Okay, there is tremendous reward in, and we'll talk about a little bit some of this later with like even pitching, but the rewards are there. It's
mm,
very there's a lot of self discovery. There's a lot of obviously, if you create something successful, there's financial
mm.
rewards, obviously, but even just the feeling of creating something from nothing, like that's
Mm.
tremendously rewarding. So it's the most challenging thing you might do in your life, but it can and should be the most rewarding.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so attractive to people, right? I know you guys do. I mean, like, you should check out Nick's content if you haven't already. But like, there's some amazing content out there that's explained to people everything from the basics to more sort of advanced aspects of building a company. And I think a lot of that makes it super attractive, um, until perhaps people get into it and they realize that actually it's a bit more challenging and not as rewarding, perhaps
Yeah.
not as immediately rewarding
Yeah.
as I thought it would
And
be.
that's, a lot of things I've been talking about now is it is a process.
Mm,
Okay. I'll talk about it later tonight in the event. I've been building Founders Life for 10 years. Okay. 10 years. And, we are somewhere and it's been
mm,
great. We're also not where we really want to be ultimately, but that's the path, the journey. It takes a long time. And so, with entrepreneurship, yes, there's results, there's rewards. It doesn't come overnight.
mm,
It takes a while, and I would hope that that's why people are doing this. Is like the path and the journey, not just like I'm going to sell a company for millions of dollars
mm.
in a year or two. That doesn't really work.
Yeah, I don't think it works. And also those that do sell their companies, I think a lot of them find themselves bereft. They've
Yeah,
like your startup is a huge part of you, and you really have a bizarrely strong emotional tie to the thing that you're building.
yeah,
Literally blood, sweat, and tears. So however that startup ends, hopefully, for everyone watching, it's good news for you guys in terms of how it ends. But there's always this sense of this void that you feel like you need to fill. So I think you're right. Like, it's a journey. I mean, it's a journey with that startup, and you never cease like trying to get to the end of that journey until the journey end comes. But then you're jumping straight back into another one. Like, I'm sure if you weren't doing this, you'd be doing something
doing
else, right?
doing something else. Well, hey, let's get into so Taisk,
Mm,
and we got the AI in there, so very excited to hear about this. I like to start with, let's back up into what problem did you see in the world? What did you see that you wanted to influence, change, and fix?
yeah. Look, I mean, I suppose there's a macro and a micro, and so like the macro perspective is slightly dystopian. I think that the way that the world is evolving, I think there are going to be some potentially negative consequences. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if we look at AI, for example, I mean, the leaps and bounds that AI has been making since the 50s, and particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, is going to come to a point where it's going to provide the biggest entities in the world, the biggest corporations, the biggest organizations, with this incredible resource, which is going to necessitate a reduction in headcount. A lot of people say that AI is not going to take your jobs. I think it will. I think that's tragic, but I genuinely think it will, and I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than a lot of people would like you to believe. And it's also going to take the sorts of jobs that have typically felt very safe, sort of like the white collar jobs, right? Um, and so, what do we then do with this enormous group of people? Uh, you could sit them on some sort of universal basic income uh, to finance them, but a lot of people are going to get bored. They're going to have lives that are relatively meaningless, and we're seeing what happens in that environment when that plays out. Basically leads to great misery, upset, and eventually rioting. So that's kind of like the macro picture, right? I think the world's going to change. This is going to be outcome. It's slightly inevitable. So what do we do? And so my idea from the macro is like, right, we're going to have a huge group of people. I would love them to become entrepreneurs. I think there are amazing ideas out there. There's incredible individuals who can bring sort of different skill sets and talents to entrepreneurship. And if we can build takes to help these small businesses with their journey, epic, in a way which doesn't cost them any money. So on a more sort of micro level, what is Taisk doing? Well, Taisk is putting AI into tasks, which is the name. I should have called it Tasks, damn it. But we call it Taisk. It's putting AI into tasks. So we've then got to think like, well, what tasks do entrepreneurs have? It could be simple things like capturing their VAT, so like their tax receipts, and like processing it and submitting a tax form, or it could be generating social media content every single day based on trending topics. All of these different plethora of like things that people have to do. Conceivably, you could utilize the same technologies that are going to result in this huge sort of upset to workforces and bring them to the benefit of startups and smaller businesses and schools and non-profits who otherwise wouldn't be able to share in this great technological evolution. So the macro is the world's changing. The micro is what are we going to do about it?
I love it. So one angle I want to take here, which is, look, I think the short of it is you're looking ahead of the curve and getting out there. It's like, hey, let's get in front of this, or at least do the best we can. What I think what comes to mind is the way that AI, if you want to go macro, the way AI is talked about right now is this like thing that this entity, this thing that it's going to do this thing is going to do this to us, and it almost is like this alien thing that's coming and affecting us. And from politicians, whether it's in the United States or in the UK or wherever, or it's the large companies, or all the podcasts, the things you hear, in some ways I don't think that it's not a positive, because they're talking about this thing that's going to do something to us humans. I think what you're starting to align to is say, hey, let's bring it aside to us. Let's bring it to our side and have it be an assistant, have it help us. With our tasks. So it's taking it from this external thing to be scared of to something that can assist us and make us better. Right. That's kind of I'm like seeing that, right? And like, talk about that a little bit.
I think you're right. I mean, yes, absolutely. We want to democratize an aspect of the technology that is being developed, and we're developing our own sort of proprietary tools to try and make that happen. But the reality is, our resourcing and internal team capabilities. There's only 6 of us, compared to, say, let's pick a big bank, Bank of America. Bank of America is spending something like $4 billion just on AI this year. Like, just 4 billion.
Yeah,
that's a shed load of money,
yeah.
Right? And you think about what they could do with that technology. They're not doing it, for any other reason than to try and increase their margins, right? Like, I think you'd be naive to believe that 4 billion is going to have a sort of ethical or moralistic priority. It might have a benefit or somewhere they'll market it, but that's what it's doing. Yeah. They're trying to build AI to make their systems better. Now, obviously, we can't compete with that. But what we can do is recognize that, this stuff is going to happen, whether we like it or not. We can't stop Bank of America from building AI. We can't stop all of this incredible investment going into these technologies, which is going to change the world and our understanding of computers and all of that stuff. But what we can try and do is prepare to make what aspects of technology we can accessible, affordable, and understandable, relatable
Relatable.
to the general public, or particularly the small businesses or small
And I
organizations
would
that we're
even
servicing.
say trustworthy,
Yeah.
meaning, like you mentioned earlier, look, jobs are going to get displaced. I also personally believe that too, but I also believe that, I think with new technology, new opportunities come, and honestly, the people, that jobs are going to be taken here in the next 10, 20, 30 years, there's going to be other jobs to be done and positions to be had and all these things, right? That's all going to happen. But what I'm saying is that you're also, in your vision, what I hear is helping us not only have it be relatable, it's trustworthy, and
Mm.
it's like that's going to be on my side versus an adversary. And I think that that's really important over time, is, especially leaders like us, and whether we're small startups or big corporations, starting to use the language
Mm.
of, hey, this is beneficial. This is how we use it to assist us,
Mm.
and um, it's very, very interesting. Um, walk out, walk out 10. I don't know. You pick 5 or 10 years, but
5 to 10 years, yeah.
what do you see, and how do you want Taste to be in the industry? Like, what how do you see the company and the ecosystem in about 5 to 10 years?
I think that there are two areas that really excite me about the way that Taisk is growing. I think the first is helping small businesses. So within that, I include schools and startups and non-profits. Do more with less. To emulate what these big companies are trying to do or have been doing with the technology that we're providing. And yeah, I hear what you're saying around sort of like trust, but the non-deterministic nature of AI means that it's kind of like a wild horse. Like you can kind of corral it, you can kind of like beat it, and like you can try and instruct it and get it to do what you want it to do. But at the end of the day, it's still a wild horse, and it's going to do
It's
something
gonna
maybe like
go.
totally weird, and you're
Yeah.
like, why has it done that? And that's that's the a lot of people talk about that being a negative, talk about his this, and actually that's a wonderful positive about the system. But yeah, so one point it's like, right, let's do more with less. Super cool. If you're a small nonprofit team, you can compete with the biggest charities out there for funding and public awareness because you can utilize these types of tools. Epic, really cool. The other side is like, it's really sunny today. How about we don't sit in front of our computers to do our work? That is so cool. Because a lot of these agents, you could run them on a personal basis, set them up so that they are, say, automatic in terms of like the scheduling. So they might turn on at 8 o'clock, like your heating, and then turn off at 6, or they might be sort of on full time. And what that means is suddenly you're able to have like a digital twin who's doing a lot of the mundane tasks that you would otherwise have to do in front of a computer, whilst you're out walking in the hills or spending time with family or doing meetings with colleagues. So I think those are two really interesting avenues that I'm looking forward to seeing develop with Taste, whilst the bigger world. Um, it's terrifying,
I
isn't
like it.
it?
I like
It's
it.
bloody
Well,
terrifying.
that leads me to two-part question here.
Mm,
What excites you most, and then we'll go to what concerns you most, and especially the direction of AI. But what
mm.
excites you most? Let's go positive first.
Okay, okay, fine. Of those two angles, it's definitely cool to do more with less. But like, office life or work life has become this sort of weird sort of impression of people sitting in front of cubicles, sitting in front of computers in their cubicles in
Right.
these air-conditioned open plan offices. Everything's grey, everything's sort of very Orwellian. How cool would it be if like you could do work, like you're actually working, but the work is not necessarily you sitting in front of a computer to complete tasks? I think that's really interesting and really cool. That will retain people's jobs, people get paid, it's positive for the economy, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's the aspect that I'm most excited about. I would love to see more people working, but not working in front of their computers as we've done for the last 20, 30 years.
Let's stay on that for a second. I, I'm liking that vision too, and maybe hopefully we're somewhat at the tail end of this period in time where we're just hunched over
Mm.
like for 8 hours or whatever, like sitting
Like
here.
T-Rexes, right? With like little
Yeah,
fingers or
like
little hands.
can we have maybe a time where there's some things working in the background for us, and the tasks get
Yeah.
done in specific ways, and I think that that's very interesting. So I love that vision, and looking forward to that time.
I hope so. I mean, the thing that just on that, like the thing that blew my mind, and I'm going to get these dates wrong now that I haven't got Wikipedia in front of me, but I was Googling autopilot. I was like, planes are really cool. We've had pilots, we've had planes, for not that long. And what I found incredible was that autopilot was invented in something like 1915 or 1919. Like, yeah, like nuts. Like, we invent the plane, and then like only a decade later, we invent autopilot, but we've still got
Whoa.
pilots. And I think that's kind of where I see this like AI working for smaller organizations or for individuals is, yeah, you can still be the pilot with your plane. You set the direction, you're telling these agents what to do, and you are kind of like making sure they do them.
Yeah.
But you've got this epic tool that allows you to perhaps not have a nap. I've never been a pilot, but whatever they do up there when they've got autopilot on, that allows it to take up much of the
Yeah.
workload for you. And I suppose that's where I'm hoping a lot of this stuff goes.
Yeah.
Like that blew my mind. That autopilot's been around for such a long time.
Crazy. Yeah. Let's go with a thought around what's concerning, healthily concerning to you,
Yeah.
of maybe the things that we see at this point.
I think the thing that scares the bejesus out of me is people not having purpose. It makes me very scared, very nervous, and I don't see a positive outcome for it. And so we need to ensure that people have the opportunity to have a purpose, to have a function in life. And I think a lot of the way that um, businesses and things have sort of grown, it's meant that it's not being able to provide every single person with the opportunity to discover their purpose and to sort of to live their lives. With AI coming along, suddenly you're going to have, well, I mean, this is my theory, right? So like this is my belief, is that AI, particularly in sort of the enterprise level, the sort of the top echelons of the way that the stuff is being developed, is going to result in job losses. It might not result in people getting sacked or made redundant, but we probably just won't see people's roles getting renewed. So slowly but surely, the requirement for, say, accountants or lawyers or data entry or all of these things that currently take up a huge amount of the workforce are going to be reduced. And what do you do? If you're this person who's studied for all this amount of time, you've got these tuition fees, so this debt from your tuition fees and all this experience. Suddenly you're not needed. And that worries me greatly.
Yeah.
What do those people then go and do? I mean, obviously, I would hope, and I know you would do, Nick, that they find your content, they get excited about becoming a founder, and they go into entrepreneurship, and it's all rosy and happy. But I think we've seen, particularly in mental health amongst men, a huge issue as a result of people feeling that they don't have a purpose, and perhaps what we've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, and I have thought in that direction, but not as deeply, and I can for sure see that, and I can understand it, and purpose is very, very important to everyone, and I feel it deeply from like the what we're creating and what I've created with Founders Live, and this is partly why I tour and travel around the world, is to meet people like you and to realize everyone does have a desire to have a purpose, and some have grabbed onto that, some haven't, and as you're pointing at, there could be more and more people that when they lose these their job or opportunity, maybe they start losing that purpose, and that is scary. So we don't have the answers, but I think what you just unfolded is like the next thing that we all need to be aware of. And that's like from mental health to larger organizations need to be aware of that so that we can start solving that, or at least providing opportunities, mechanisms, conversations, so that that becomes something people feel okay exploring and being open with, right? Because look, there's massively successful people, like financially, like, just outwardly successful athletes or musicians, and they're talking about mental health, and they have a significant or they've discovered their purpose. So what about the people that haven't, gotten to that level of success? And oh man, so
It's terrifying, right?
it is
I
terrifying.
mean, like, if it wasn't for a lack of purpose, the Nazis wouldn't have been able to rise to power in Germany. We forget, like, yeah, I mean, Hitler was, a full-on a-hole, but he got elected.
Yeah.
And you've got to think, well, like, why did he get elected? Or why did he sort of achieve this sort of vote shares? Because he offered purpose to a group of people who were, totally and utterly disenfranchised with
Yeah.
with the way, with the hand that the world had dealt them.
Yeah.
And like, geez, like, that's just one country. You then sort of extrapolate it across everywhere.
Look, my hope on this, just one little sliver here, is you pointed it out. Yes, selfishly, but just selfishly meaning bringing to the world.
Yeah.
I hope more people see opportunities for entrepreneurship and what we call creative entrepreneurship. So maybe there's going to be a blossoming again of art, exploration. So
I think you're right. We saw it during COVID. I mean, I don't know, because you're Seattle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, suddenly everyone was at home and, like, on lockdown. Like, all these cottage industries have sprung up.
Yeah.
And people were like, hey, I really love sewing. I'm really good at sewing. I'm going to become a sewer
Like
and sell my sewing stuff.
baking
Yeah.
and just
That's
stuff, right?
entrepreneurship. It's the same deal, right?
So, hopefully we start to see these things bubble up. But thank you for saying that. It's very, very important. Hey, let's go into kind of
something more positive.
something a little more positive here.
Yeah.
How about you've been doing this for a while, so if you were going to speak to younger, earlier entrepreneurs, or maybe yourself a handful of years ago, what let's go two pieces of advice, two kind of lessons that you've learned that you would want to know earlier in your journey.
Okay, I think I thought about this a lot, and whilst waiting for this interview, I thought you might ask me this question. I was like, so what am I going to say? I think the two bits of advice that I would give any entrepreneur, and one that I think about for myself a lot, are get help and don't be half-assed. I think number one, get help. What do I mean by that? I mean, there's amazing content out there, like the stuff that you guys produce. There's stuff on YouTube, there's books. But I think look for a mentor. Look for someone who's been there and done that. Not someone who wants to get paid. I think there are a lot of organizations out there that that might be super good, but I don't think you need to pay a mentor. I think you just need to have an emotional relationship, and people generally want to help, and particularly founders who have gone through it love to share their war stories. We love this.
We love to talk
about how awful it is. So I think get yourself a mentor, someone who's honest with you, who doesn't blow smoke up your ass and just tells you the hard truths that you need to hear. And then number two is, like, don't be half-assed. I think if you're going to do it, you've got to really commit, and I mean that in every way of the word. I think trying to be an entrepreneur whilst also being employed somewhere else is a recipe for apathy. I think you'll find that 2 years will go by and you'll be like, yeah, I haven't really done anything. There's nothing really to show for it, but I'm a founder. And some people like that. Some people like the title without sort of committing. But also, when it comes to, like, financially and, like, in terms of the product, if you're going to fundraise, you've got to commit 100% to fundraising. You've just got to live and breathe funding. If you're going to bootstrap it, you've got to find the money, and you've got to be prepared to put your life savings into this project. There's no halfway house for it. You've got to really go for it. Same with the product. Same with getting the vision live. Same with promotion and publicity. Every opportunity, you've just got to commit. So I think those are my two things. Find someone with I was going to say with the grey hairs, but sorry, Nick.
Yes.
But, find someone with the grey. Find someone who's been there and done that, and will give you free advice when you need it. And if you're going to do it, you've got to commit to it in every way that word means.
Absolutely. And although I for sure agree with the first one, and that's absolutely great. The second one is I'm going to double down on that. I this is if I was asked this question, this is one of the things that I would say, and I say this to a lot of founders about commitment. It's really interesting, traveling around the world, and each year I pick a part of the world, visit. And last year I went through Latin America. The year before I was in Indonesia. And look, I've met a lot of people, and I've met a lot of founders. And what's weird about it now is I can pretty quickly tell if someone it's binary, if they're committed or if they're not sure yet. I can tell you are committed for sure. And it's crazy because you are absolutely right. That is the difference between at least having an opportunity for success and actually having a business and a path and a future there. And then I meet these people that, whether it's, Founders Live Seattle or Founders Live in New York or here in Edinburgh, it's like, okay, you're halfway there. And honestly, halfway does not get you there. And, everyone's in their own place. I understand that. But hearing from you, hearing from me and other founders, you absolutely have to commit. The commitment will result in, this is where I fully believe this, that universe works in this way, man. When you tell the world and you tell people, and maybe you're talking to whoever you're talking to out there, things start connecting and happening. And then when you talk to those customers, or you're sitting in front of investors, they can smell it too. They know when you're 100% committed. And then they're like, of course they're going to consider funding someone that's 100% committed. They're not ever going to consider funding someone that they can sense or smell that they're not 100% committed. So the commitment, and it's hard to describe what that is, but you are 100% correct. And the lesson here, everyone, is fully commit and have a conversation with your life partner, your children, your family, your whatever, your co-founders. Make that happen, or just be done, because it is just a lot of waste of time, effort, and energy if you're not fully committed.
You can't be a part-time drug addict. You've got to put everything into it and live and breathe it. Warts and all.
It is the first thing. So I'm so glad you said that. And with some of the things I'm recording, I say it, but I'm like, look, commitment is traveling around the world. Okay. I put everything on the line, and, it's fun and it's great. And it's really, things have really come together in my world and Founders Live. But what I will say is, adding to that, commitment allows you to get those little wins. Little wins gain that momentum, and momentum starts to then, and you've seen it, it's crazy. It's hard to describe, but you're like, boom, boom. Oh, did it? All of a sudden these things come together, and it's because you have 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, not 2 hours a day or 5 hours a week because you're working a full-time job. So commitment is huge.
It does a lot for your decision making when you put everything on the line.
Yeah.
So my last business, I got VC backing, and truthfully pretty easily. We raised a bit of money. It was back in 2018, 2019, so probably the environment was easier. It's definitely a lot harder now.
Yeah.
This time I'm bootstrapping. And what does that mean? Well, it means that I've got to make money, and I've got to be prepared to put my so basically for me, it was I sold my flat in London. That money is now in my company, and that does a lot for your clarity when it comes to decision making.
Yes.
It's right, I've put everything on black. I've got to play this hand. I've got to play it all the way through to the end. And it might work, it might not work, but it's a journey.
But that's the journey, and that's the great thing, is you at least know that you're all in, and if it works out, when it works out, it's incredible and the life is great. But if it doesn't work out, you at least know, what? I put it all in. They did.
Gave it everything.
The cards didn't fall. The chips didn't fall the way that it's fine.
Yeah.
Move forward from that, right? But if you, I've just met a lot of people that, here's even crazier, not naming any names, but in certain cities, especially the one I live in, I'll see someone, and 3 years later, I see someone at whether it's Founders Live event or another event, and it's like they're at the same place.
Yeah.
What? Still kind of working on it. Yeah, we're here, but we're gonna try to, and maybe they have another job, and it's like, wow,
Mm.
okay. And I'm not judging anyone, but that is not the recipe for success.
I don't think so. I think like the beautiful thing about a startup is you can keep pivoting, and if you are 100% committed to the startup, it doesn't even really matter what it does. I think a lot of founders, when I sort of first start talking to them, they've got this great vision and it's going to do everything, it's going to change the world, and then they're like, no one's buying it, and I'm like, well, change the fucking vision, right? Like right, like you can still have your startup and like your dream and your aspirations for building this thing, but the beauty of startup land is you can change it. You can change it from minute to minute, hour to
Yeah.
hour. You can have a conversation with a customer and they're like, like they'll say to me, they'll be like, Alex, what we're actually really looking for is something that can do this. And you're like, yeah, sure, no problem. It's on the roadmap. That weekend, you're building it, right?
It's now on the roadmap.
And now it's here. And they're like, oh, great, yeah, cheers. Yeah, we'll go ahead. It's like, great, fantastic, money. And so like chase the money, chase what you need in order to give your startup life.
Yeah.
And again, go back to being committed. And I think if you are fully and utterly committed to this idea of this particular startup, you'll find those opportunities. I think, like you're saying, and you'll be able to act upon them really quickly. And you can't help but build, right? You can't help but be successful if you're listening to people who are giving you money.
Well, to finish this up, like by being committed and doing the things that you just said, what's crazy is all of a sudden the opportunities start falling in your lap. But it's because you're listening and you're paying attention. Just like when someone says red car, and then the rest of the day you keep seeing these red cars, and it's because your mind is like, oh, red car. That's what commitment does. Is it really starts to bring in all of those opportunities day in, day out, month and year out, that they start coming at you because like you're just open for it. So, Alex, this has been great. Man, this is so cool. Where can people find more information and kind of maybe get in touch with you as well?
I mean, they can go to taisk.com, so taisk.com. I mean, if you're in Edinburgh, you might see my jacket with a QR code on. So what I do is I go and loiter around all of like the big tourist hotspots, and I just have my back to people whilst they're taking photographs of like Edinburgh Castle and stuff like that. So
all of a sudden they're like, "Whoa, what?"
They're like, "Hey, what's this company?"
Love it.
Great spike and free promotion. So yeah, go to taisk.com. If you're in a startup and you want to get some free AI to help you out, come to our website. There's some really cool stuff on there that can do everything from email automation to calendar scheduling to content creation and pushing it to LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter.
So cool. Well,
Cheers,
thanks so much. All right.